Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Recording on a Sunday again this week. That's why I'm in my workout. I'm still in my workout clothes right now. Came home, ate this, I'll shower right after. You know, I just want to like to laser focus on these things. So, a couple of things before we get started. Number one, yes, I am playing Monster Hunter this coming Friday. I always multiplayer it up. I always stream it on both YouTube and Twitch. And I have open rooms, so if there's ever a spot, anyone is free to join, claim the spot, come along. Doesn't matter. I'll probably be playing SNS and Hammer. Only reason I am even considering SNS is because I haven't gotten to play Hammer with hit stop changes. And the beta Hammer gameplay was kind of bad. So I'm really hoping that it's good in the full game once the changes are in. Because yeah, they didn't put the hit stop changes in the beta. In fact, I don't think they did any moveset changes in the beta. They did it. There was like a play build that like some creators got to play that does have the changes, and I haven't seen that yet, but I need to feel it anyway. And SNS felt really good in beta, so I'm definitely going to be putting my time into that. Number two, this video is going to have a Magic Spoon sponsor. So before the first question, that is going to be present. Thank you to them for sponsoring. And number three, sometimes I scroll through the questions beforehand to get an idea of how many there are. Sometimes I don't. This week happened to be one of the ones that I did. And I usually read through like the first line or two, so I don't read the entire thing, so I still have to kind of react to it. I just like to get an idea of kind of what I'm in for. And I'm going to address one particular comment before we even get into the Q&A section. I'm going to read it verbatim. Monday Q&A is tending to be tending less and less to be Final Fantasy XIV related. No offense, bro, but there's always a fitness question first. I couldn't care less. More and more, I'm thinking I will skip these videos. I know we're in a content drop, but could you at least put the 14 unrelated stuff last? So, here is how the Monday Q&A works. I open my own video, I scroll down, and sequentially, whatever questions there are, unless I miss one when I'm scrolling back through and I need to get it later, I literally look at whatever comment shows first. It sorts by most relevant, I think. No, it just sorts by top comments. So yeah, it sorts by top comments. I scroll down, first hashtag, read it. Or first thing that looks like a question, maybe like somebody forgot to hashtag it. So the order of the questions is completely arbitrary. It's literally just in the order of whatever is asked. If that is the question that it presents to me first, that is the question that I will answer first. To my second point, I don't care what order you want the questions in. It's a weekly Q&A, not a weekly Final Fantasy XIV video. If you don't like it, feel free to skip the video or just skip the individual question that you don't want to hear. Because quite frankly, I don't care what questions you want. I care what questions the people asking questions want. So, if your question is, can I put Final Fantasy XIV stuff first? The answer is no. Just hope that the Final Fantasy XIV stuff happens to be first. Or fuck off. One of the two. I don't care which one you choose, but one of the two. So make your decision. With that, let's get on into the Q&A after the Magic Spoon ad, which is pretty funny to follow that up after that, but here you go. Before we go any further, though, this video does have a sponsor, Magic Spoon. If you've been around the channel for a while, you recognize them, but if not, let me give you the down low. Magic Spoon is a brand that gives me all sorts of options for my protein intake, just so I can keep it varied. As a cereal snacker, it's always good to have something like their treat bars around, which I'll usually devour far too quickly every month that they send them, and their new granola, which I also devour probably way too quickly. Listen, they both really hit the spot when I need a good snack to sate my body after a tough workout, and I do like snacking. Now, if you'd like to try Magic Spoon while also supporting the channel, then click the link below to get some today. Build your own custom box of product with tons of available flavors. Again, the treat bars and the granola. Oh, trust me, you're not going to be able to stop yourself. Best of all, use my link and discount code Mr. Happy to get $5 off of your box. You can also get it at your local grocery store or even on Amazon. And if you don't like it, Magic Spoon has a 100% happiness guarantee. Let them know and they'll refund you, no questions asked. So click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use code Mr. Happy to get $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/Mr. Happy to save $5 on your order. It even works in Canada and the UK. Thanks again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring, and now on with the video. All right, hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Happy Monday. Hello, that's a hello. I count that. Just so you know, I count that. It seems from my reading that most are assuming the next jobs in 8.0 will be tank and fizz ranged. Yeah, so to clarify that, we are going off of the pattern that expansions have led us to this far, which would dictate that tank and fizz ranged are next because fizz range hasn't received a job in quite some time. Both the melee roles that were only one job have both gotten a job since that time. And we've had Red Mage, we've had Pictomancer now. So Fizz Range is the job that hasn't had something since 5.0. So we had what? Healer, Reaper, then, which was in line with what people were expecting, was Healer and a DPS. Then double DPS, which was, again, within expectation, similar to Stormblood. And now people are expecting Tank and Fizz Range since, again, it's been 3 expansions since either of those got something. I'm still in the camp of I'm not entirely confident we will keep getting 2 jobs in expansion. But Yoshi P himself seems to say that just 1 is probably not exciting enough, so we probably will. Working with those assumptions, what do you feel or guess that the playstyles for those possible future jobs may be like? So I feel like answering this question at this particular time is actually quite difficult. The main reason being is that we don't actually know the scope of the job changes in 8.0, which are supposed to buckle down on job identity a lot more. But we don't know how extensive that's going to be. I'm of the opinion it's going to be less extensive than other people think it will be. I think it will be more about how the job gauges interact with the jobs and making them feel more flavorful, so your button presses don't, like Dark Knight and Warrior don't have those comparisons drawn, which doesn't work as much anymore. I feel like the whole Delirium versus Fellcleave thing they have kind of gone separate ways, but those buttons are still major power points and still have similar-ish functions, so people draw the comparison. I think we're just going more in those like individual directions and less like an overhaul like some people seem to think it is. But until we know how extensive those changes actually will be, saying what playstyles will be filled is tough because, you know, there's like dot playstyle that has been gotten rid of that people kind of want back, but I don't think will happen just because of the way 14 is unless they make substantial changes. There's just simple job identities that you could do, the way that skills combo together, even just looking at Viper, the way that the combos like kind of interact with each other and they just kind of bounce back and forth between. It's monk-ish, but it still has its own flavor to it. Little things like that can kind of define like what the speed of a job actually is or what the theme of a job is. So it is mostly, it's less about playstyle and more about analyzing how does the job get to its powerful stuff. Does it have to combo through, you know, 3, 4, 5 times, something Dragoon-like? Does it simply have to maintain several buffs? Like, I made a video saying that if I did Puppet Master as a non-limited job, I'd do it as a Fizz range. And effectively, it would rotate between each of its different puppets, and each of those different puppets, you would have to manage their maneuvers in order to provide buffs to the puppet and give it certain commands. And you can actually, the way I put it together, I felt like you could actually achieve that kind of reasonably within Final Fantasy XIV's job system. But that even has similarities to Bard, where they rotate between the songs, which is why I kind of derived it from that, because like if it's going to go in the Fizz range role, it might feel familiar to Bard players. So that's tough. So for tanks, Paladin is the healer. Yeah, I get what you mean. Dark Knight is magic-based. Warrior is self-sustaining. Gunbreaker plays like a DPS. Dude, Dark Knight plays like a DPS. Like, I know where you're coming from, but bro, Dark Knight also plays like a DPS. That job can feel pretty crazy to play. What possible gimmicks left? Again, it's not about gimmicks. It's about the path to power. All those things you actually just described, like Paladin can play the healer, but that's not how it should be playing. You shouldn't be spamming your healing buttons. It's like one of the cool things the job can do, but it's far from an identity. It's more like the panic option, right? Paladin itself is really more like traditional sword and board with like some spell blade. Like that's kind of the more thematic way to describe it. Dark Knight, big sword wielding, actually has no, it's got a good amount of magic. It's actually got a substantial amount of magic damage, but they don't like stand there casting spells. Like what if you had a tank that casts spells that couldn't be interrupted or, you know, is delayed? You could do that. Like, I know Paladin, you could say, does it, but I mean, like, hard casting. Like, that's actually, like, a big thing, is them trying to find ways to hard cast the really hard-hitting things. Like, you could even just reach into other roles and other games to just kind of look at the ideas. Like, when people ask me about healer ideas, I go, well, we have nothing like Resto Druid. Do I think it would work in 14? Yeah, if you, like, redid some things, I think it could absolutely work. We don't have anything like a Resto Druid for healing. So... or something like a bear tank. I guess looking at WoW, you know, a bear tank is another thing. The problem with bear tank in this game is the damage is too predictable. Bear tanking in WoW, depending on which era of WoW you're talking about with bear tanking, has varying levels of success for what its job identity is. And I feel like we've tried that with the big HP but lower defensive capabilities at times. But there's all sorts of, like, I guess less to the point of it being exactly like bear, more to the point of there are clearly other ideas out there, and it's just a matter of what ideas they want to fit into the game. What's left for Fizz range? Yeah, I mean, I went over the Puppet Master thing, but yeah, the path to power is the big thing. Not so much what gimmick it needs to possibly follow at some capacity. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Haps. Hi. I have 2 questions for you today. One, do you honestly think CBU 3 is going to nail the 8.0 job rework? I feel like I just kind of covered that with my thoughts on it in the previous question, so just read that, I suppose. 2, you and a lot of 14 creators talk a lot about moving exploration zones earlier in the expansion cycles, but how would you implement the change? Basically, what content would be pushed back to make way? You don't have to push any content back. You just have to go into the expansion's development with the idea that you are going to release this. Like, you from the start develop it with the intention of releasing it in that window. They don't say, hey, we're going to make an exploration content. I don't know. It might take until 0.2x. Like, they have an idea of when they want to release it. They're not just like winging it and being like, maybe it'll be done by then. They're choosing that release timing and then developing around it while taking the things that are sooner and putting more resources at the time into those. So it's just like on the slower resource track. I don't think you have to change anything. Like, honestly, you could have pushed Chaotic back. I liked Chaotic, but would I have rather had an exploration zone? Yeah, and keep in mind, the work to make these two things is in no way equatable. Like, we're talking about a reused asset fight with some new assets in there, obviously, with the balance team and the combat teams needing to work together to figure out how to do this, not really frequently done style of content, and to rework bosses that we've already had. Like, it's completely different workflow. It doesn't involve, like, building out an entire zone and, developing a separate progression system with phantoms. Like, it obviously doesn't require all that. But the point is that they clearly went in thinking, hey, we want to try this more difficult large-scale content, and we're going to do it here. And we want to do exploration content this expansion, and we're going to plan to do it around here. With some leeway. They don't give us exact release dates until they're sure they're actually going to hit their goal, which gives them some flexibility as developers. But if they were developing for it with the intent of getting to it earlier in the expansion, there's a good chance they would finish it and release it earlier in the expansion. So I don't think you actually need to change much of anything. You just have to want to release it and develop around that release schedule for that content. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Apps. Hi. So like you, this is a pretty long paragraph. So like you, I was a longtime Final Fantasy 11 player. Now the long paragraph makes sense. This is like me. I played 11. Before moving over to 14, from NAPC release till the tail end of Otter Gone. Your Final Fantasy 11 series, plus Juno and 14, really got the nostalgia pumping, so I've decided to dive back in, see what's different, and really experience the story. However, my situation is a little different from a lot of returners. I still have my old account from 2003. Me too. What's up? I prefer to keep on with that character, but jumping in after nearly 20 years away to a very changed game is very overwhelming. I've read the new player guide, and while it's useful, it's not as useful when you're not starting fresh, I completely agree, and are instead trying to resume an old character with a few 75s and an uncertain amount of story progress in multiple expansions. What advice could you give to trying to puzzle together? I would write down all of the quests it says you are currently on in each expansion area, and then just literally Control F those and go to that spot in the guide. I would also say that prioritize getting to 99 above all else. 99 lets you solo pretty much everything up until like potentially the tail end of Seekers, the tail end of Rhapsodies, and a decent chunk of the Voracious Resurgence, which quite frankly, I don't recommend you try to do. You have to basically solo an endgame content that takes weeks of soloing in order to actually progress the story, and you need a pretty geared character to even do that. I'd say if you maybe had a couple of friends, you might feel better, but all of you would also still need to have a similar amount of progress for it to go smoothly. It's very scary trying to do that solo. I had a great character. It was geared, not to the teeth, but like, there were not so many routes for me to go to get better gear at the point that I was. It was really afterglowing my weapon. I'm sorry, not even afterglowing, augmenting my afterglowed weapon. That was like the kind of next direct path to power, or maybe picking up an Aeonic instead of my Mythic, instead of my Empyreans that were upgraded all the way. But my short list would be focus on getting to 99 first. Write down all the quests you're at and just Control F and just try to continue from there. If you don't remember what to do, I don't remember where all of them are, but there are NPCs that will wipe your story progress. They will wipe your quest progress. I don't know how it works if you're in the middle of it and not all the way done with it, but I I think that might be a decent option. I would Google where those NPCs are, wiki where those NPCs are, and if you really want kind of like a full fresh start on those storylines, go to those NPCs and wipe your story progress clean and start from the beginning of the stories. But look into that. But 99, definitely 99 is top priority because it just makes doing everything way easier. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hi. With the confirmation in the most recent live letter that critical engagements will be returning in the Occult Crescent. I keep calling it the Crescent Island because that's what they were calling it, you know, a while back. I mean, it is the Crescent Island from Final Fantasy V. It's just, you know. What are your thoughts on the possibility of duels returning as well? So they didn't mention duels. So what I'm assuming is that they will bring them back, but they will be different and they will not be in the first part. I think they're going to focus more on the party-related aspects of the first part and less on the less on those individual bits. But I do think duels will return at some point. Personally, the duels are my favorite part. I agree. I loved the duels. Don't get me wrong. I liked pretty much all of Bozja, other than some of the reward structures for like Dilibrim Savage. But I agree. Duels. I loved duels, especially when I was trying to work on 10-10-10 to 100% the entire zone. Duels were a great way for me to, it was great to be able to solo it, provide buffs for other people, kind of get to show off a little bit. You know, you're the one who's front and center. You know, I usually am when I'm streaming, but now it's on the zone too. I don't even have to be watching the stream. But yeah, the pressure and excitement taken on a high level until Flare Star came out. But then seeing people botch the Flare Star because they hadn't done it before that was always rough. A lot of players complain quite vocally due to the RNG nature of getting picked. Absolutely. I agree with that problem. I think it would probably be better if... So, the system they eventually came up with was that every time you failed to get into a duel, you got a stacking resource. I don't remember what it was called. A renown or something? I don't remember what it was called. And if you had the highest of that resource when the duel was challenged, then you would get picked. It was automatic. If you were tied with other people, then, one of you would get picked. But then you would still get a point and go up. So yeah, it's the only sometimes downside was taking duels that you didn't want. Like, let's say you needed to fight Lion in the Southern Front, and you took the duel for I don't even remember the names of the other ones, the other two there. Was Gabriel? No, Gabriel was the mount, but I don't think that was the boss. Maybe it was the boss too. Gabriel. And you took it because you just wanted to get the point, but then you actually get selected. That's a problem. So I think what they should probably do is give you a stacking resource from performing well, maybe not getting hit in critical engagements. And that's it. Just you get the resource from that, not from failing to get into the duel. And then upon reaching, let's say 10, 15 renown, you can then challenge the NPC. And then it gives a zone-wide thing where it says, this player is challenging this duel. And then everyone can go over to it. That way, players who have no interest in the duels, they very likely won't for no reason challenge the duel, right? Or if they do challenge it without the intent of really winning, just to kind of see what it's like, they're not then taking that opportunity from another person either. They are just like, it's them just being like, they could just say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to see what this is like. You don't need to come over here. I'm going to die. It's just something like that. That way it's in the player's control. You still have to perform well in the critical engagements in order to earn your spot. But the only thing inhibiting you from doing it at that point would be somebody else being in the middle of one. I'd say maybe put a 5-minute cooldown on it at most. Maybe not even that. Maybe just as soon as it despawns, somebody else can queue up. And then you could have like really cool things where like maybe you and your FC go in together, right? And it's like maybe like 12, 13 of you, and you all get like 15 renown. And then you're all like, all right, we're all going to challenge it back to back to back. We're all just going to do it. Like, it's just going to be a thing that we do. Like, and then we'll all cheer each other on and stuff, see who wins, see who doesn't, like, maybe try to learn. Like, then you could do cool things like that, where you just kind of one by one go through trying to do the duels, or like maybe you all spread out and do like different duels around the zone. I don't know. I think a system like that is not without reason to be built. And I just don't think the duels will be in the Occult Crescent. I think they will be in the later zones. By the way, I got so wrapped up in answering the question. You said notoriety. It was called notoriety. I'm calling it renown now, though, but it's notoriety. You were correct. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Hey. So you were a Neopets user. I was. I played pretty much right when Neopets came out, and then again in college when I was playing World of Warcraft. We would like have it on the side while we were waiting for like battleground queues or waiting for raid groups to fill and stuff. So yeah, I was that. Do you remember what pets you had? No, I don't remember anything. So true story about Neopets. I got banned from Neopets. So you know how they had the little lottery scratchers? That, whatever, like a normal scratch off. You know, you scratch 3 and maybe you get a prize, whatever. I scratched one, like a random daily one, and I got like 10,000 whatever. It was, I know it was 10,000, but it was like whatever the Neo Cash was called. And I DM'd one of my friends on the Neopets site, because you could just send a message to a friend. And I said, bro, I fucking maxed out this lottery ticket. And I said that. I fucking maxed out. I got banned for saying the F word in a private message. Yep. Now, keep in mind, that's the account I made in college. Like, I made a brand new account. But I was just like, that's not even my only bad story. I actually made an account, again, around that same time, the account right before that. And I put my birthday in wrong. I put in 1999 instead of 1990. And they were restricting me from doing certain things in game because I wasn't over 18, because it was like 2012. So I thought I was 13 years old. I don't know what you need to do. Like, I don't know what the age restriction stuff is for that, but like there were some things I just wasn't allowed to do because it thought I was 13 years old. I don't remember. But yeah, I had so many disastrous Neopets. Yeah. But I haven't touched it in over a decade at this point, and I don't remember nearly anything about it other than those 2 very short stories. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy. Hi. Hope you're doing all right. Yeah, I'd say so. Listen, let me tell you, I got all my blood tests back. I went to the doctor for the first time in 13 years. 13? No, I did go to the ER because I was having like breathing problems a few years ago. And I got tests then, but I don't ever remember getting those results. They're probably on file somewhere. But I haven't had like labs done or anything, and everything was good. Everything was good, great, grand, wonderful. I had a full body scan, testosterone, HDL, LDL. I forget what the kidney function one is. Begins with an E. I mean, it's all on my phone. But I had like 10 things tested, and every single one of them, good. Good. So I'd say I'm doing all right. Yeah. Been playing through some of the older Final Fantasy games recently. I was wondering who your favorite character from all the Final Fantasy games you played is. Overall, not one from each. Might be a hard question to answer. It's actually not. Shadow from Final Fantasy VI has always been a favorite. Now, some of that is nostalgia, because when I was young, he was both a frustrating character and a very intriguing character to me. Final Fantasy VI, when I was young, I guess when you're young in general, it's you get a lot of variance in how much you actually learn about characters in that game, because there's a lot of scenes that only occur when certain characters are present during certain other scenes. So, for example, one of the common ones is very early. If Sabin and Edgar are together in the castle, in Figaro Castle, then you get a scene of them in the throne room going over some of their past. Completely missable scene, but a nice little look into their history as siblings when they were younger. Shadow gets some very similar things, but they're dream sequences that are very, very character relevant, that explain his relationships with the other characters a lot better. So he doesn't just look like some random character. You understand a little bit better that he is a much deeper and darker character than they lead him to seem, whereas he just kind of seems like an edgy ninja for the most part, with a little bit of a soft spot in a few occasional scenes. But to me, he has the most interesting integration as an optional character into the game, even if the average player without a guide will miss most of those interactions. It's unfortunate, and it is one of the things Final Fantasy VI can absolutely be criticized for. But to me, that character has way more depth and flavor in very few scenes, mind you, than a lot of characters in the entire franchise that are deliberately given scenes to flesh out their characters. So Shadow to me has always been a favorite. Hashtag Mondays with the Hapster. Hello. Hi. Hope you and Ivy are well, and here are a few extra hellos for those who may have forgotten. Yeah, Ivy ran off when I wasn't petting her here at the start of the video. So recently I've started working on some old relics, mainly for the glam. I was curious about one of the steps in Shadowbringers. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry before I even read the rest, because the Shadowbringers one is one of the worst ones to go back and do. People like to say, the Zodiac weapon kind of sucks. The Shadowbringers weapon, the Delibrum step, ugh. Ugh. Hold on, let me read the rest before I start answering. One of the steps, to make it easy, requires 5 runs of Delibrum. How did I know? My question is, will that content start to die out to the point where they would either buff the other way of acquiring the required mats, alter Deliberate so it would be easier? Honestly, I'm shocked they haven't done anything. I think they see that there's just enough player interaction for them to not do anything. I completely disagree that they haven't done more for this. Or make some other way of getting the mats. Only curious since this new field op is only a few months away, where a lot of people, including myself, are super excited to get started in it, and potentially the others. Bozja and Eureka taking a bit of a... So, actually, I find the opposite to be true. Because when people finish the current one, more people tend to be like, well, I didn't do the other ones. And even right before it comes out, you see an increase in activity. So I actually find the other true, like maybe yes for the first week, but after that, I feel like the overall population, and most of them, tends to increase because people who didn't do the old ones actually want to go back and see them, regardless of what they may have heard or seen. Or even maybe they just think they haven't done it in a while. Maybe they might have a change of opinion. But I do completely agree with all your sentiments. I think the Delibram step is the biggest problem in the Shadowbringers Relic. I think the steps they have taken for Delibram have not been adequate, where basically every 15 minutes it just forces you and anyone else that's queued in and then gives you some massive buffs. You can end up with just 2 or 3 people, and quite frankly, the average player that might be queuing in like that isn't someone who's going to be trying hard and maybe bringing some crazy good actions to make up for the fact there's only a few people. You're lucky if they even bring an essence. So, honestly, I don't know what they would do, but honestly, anything would do. I would say just make the other things outside of Delubrum better for acquiring it. I'd say that's a way better step. Like, I know people who are like, oh, just do Palace of the Dead like Necromancer runs. It's like, yeah, you're right, but like, really? That's the alternative that I have to land on? Because they just don't, like, if Palace of the Dead's like 150 through 200 every 10 floors was like 3 of them, that would help. But even still, it's like, yeah, it's not a good enough answer. Add some other way to get them, man. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Ayo, Haps. Hello. With the next Savage tier coming up, I wanted to ask how you and other World First Prog teams tend to source your new gear and consumables for server up. Finding a crafter ahead of time, buying 5-slot chess pieces. Most curious is into the process as a relatively newer player that lucked into a Chloe Gold cert a while back. I was wondering how to go about selling it. So selling gold certs, usually, so you're not allowed to advertise selling things in the PF anymore. So the opposite is usually what you'll want to do. You want to go into the PF before raid tiers come out and look for buyers. So that is what you should do. There's also Discords. I don't remember, but I think there are Discords with channels for gold certs. So I would look into that too. It's going to depend on your region, your data center. But for sourcing, it honestly is a little weird. So number one, the 7.0x raid series, the first one, Arcadian in this case, has an entirely different release schedule than the rest of them. Our first expansion raid has the normal mode release after 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks is the Savage tier. On the Savage tier release, we get the tomestones, we get the crafted gear, new potions, a bunch of stuff. And so the demand for an on-wake-up crafter and the cost of it is very high, like tens and tens of millions, like way over the price of things on the auction house, because you usually have to hire crafters, like entire crafting teams, to get you stuff as soon as possible, because the raid tier is not going to last a day, most likely. That being said, when the next tier comes out, you are not looking at that kind of competition. Because unless they go back to doing things the way they did it in Shadowbringers, in Endwalker, they made a change where Savage is 1 week after the patch. So it's not 7.2, it's 7.2 plus 1 week. I don't know if they name it 0.21. I think they just... the servers don't even go down, so I'm pretty sure it's just 1 week after 7.2. But the crafted gear is available that whole week. So nobody needs to source anyone unless they just really want to buy it from a friend because they'd rather support the friend than buy it off the auction house. So most people I know aren't even sourcing crafters. They're just making it themselves or just buying it. They're like waiting 4 or 5 days and then buying it. And maybe they'll just figure it out the week of. That's what I'm doing. That's what I did for 0.2 and 0.4 in Endwalker. So your gold cert is a special case. What I told you to do for the gold cert, I would look into those. But for just general outsourcing, it's really only on expansion, the first tier, where any sort of like large scale crafting recruitment needs to happen, and it goes way, way down when the subsequent tiers come out, as long as we have that 1 week divide with these savage tiers again. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, and good morning. Good evening. Well, good morning when you see it, but good evening for me. Since a lot of the 14 patch cycle is part of the community discussion as one of late, and I probably missed your input on this, what would you shift from point X or point 0.01? So I answered this earlier, and I feel like that answer still holds true. I don't think you need to push things. I think you just need to prioritize having this thing done by this time and develop with that. Like, if they want that done for point like 0x or point to 0x or point 1x, they should be doing that now. They should realistically already be planning what the next one should look like and think about the resources going into it. They just have to make that decision. So everything I said before, I just double down on and say it again here. Oh boy, this one's a wall of text. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello. Hi. I have a question regarding healer design, and I would like your input. I just finished leveling all classes and jobs to 100, and I agree with you that Picto is fantastic in regard to job design. As a healer main, feel that 2 of the healers are lagging behind. I think I know which ones. And maybe in need of summoner level rework. That's not the best example you could have. I know what you mean, but I would not compare anything to a summoner level rework. Talking about Scholar and White Mage. Scholar identity gimmick is holding it back, in my opinion. I don't know if I agree about that. I mean, Scholar's kind of juiced. Like, that wasn't the one I thought you were going to say is lagging behind. Like, here's the thing. I prefer playing Sage, but Scholar is juiced out of its mind. If anything, Sage needs a little bit more to bring it in line with Scholar. I will say this, though. Its design has made it so that the path to adding new things to it has been not uninteresting, but less interesting than other jobs. Like when they had to update White Mage because they took away a lot of its identity pieces and had to give it things like lilies, it went through a lot of struggles. And even now, White Mage is kind of that healer that healers who just want to have a comfy job to play it. Kind of what it's always been, but just in an entirely different landscape than it used to be. But Scholar has continually shown, anytime Scholar even remotely looks like it's going to be less good than it was, it just blasts. It's like, by the way, I have Deploy Low, and they're like, they're right, they do have Deploy Low. That's crazy, right? Even when they tried to nerf that, it's Deploy Low is Deploy Low, man. Only reason played in higher end content because of changed stratagem. No. It is played in higher end content because it is fucking goated. Expedience is goated. Deploy Low is goated. And it has more than enough tools to even play in a double shield comp by using emergency tactics if they really need to do a GCD heal. Which I much prefer over Pepsis doing the AoE heal and then Pepsising afterwards. No, yeah, they're pretty juiced, Scholar. It's really... Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. I think that some things like Caracole being a buff that gets put on everyone instead of being an actual placed circle on the ground, I think is generally a more valuable thing. I also really like Hollows, but Scholar is... Scholar's pretty juiced. I really think only White Mage is lagging behind. I think Sage, if they wanted to make it equal to Scholar, could use some buffs. But its job identity, I do prefer playing. Like, if I had to play between Sage and Scholar, knowing Scholar is usually better, I would probably still play Sage. White Mage has always been the healing throughput of healers. When we changed to a 2-healer meta, it seemed to have lacked behind Astro. Yeah, because Astro's ridiculous. Like, they were like, oh, Macrocosmos. Plenary. I'm sorry, not Plenary. Earthly Star. I said Plenary. That's a White Mage ability. Earthly Star. Like, all of my card buffs, it was like, light speed. Now it's got 2 stacks. Astro's crazy. I think that change strategy on Scholar and the lack of a better gimmick for White Mage needs to be removed. No. Chain is really good on Scholar, but Scholar is, like, goated in a lot of other ways. White Mage is the bigger question, because I don't think it's unhealthy to have a healer that is more approachable. From a high-level gameplay standpoint, yes, White Mage, I think there are... See, the thing is, my design issues with White Mage come down to fundamentally how it plays to a high-level player. And I think you can add to the high-level play without compromising the simplicity and approachability of it. I actually had a stream, and I don't think I have it clipped, where I went over all the changes I would make to White Mage, and my stream was like, holy shit, we just solved it. Like, there's a handful that I remember, like, not putting the shield immediately after your... Excuse me, not immediately after wings. Like, I hate that, like, 30-second shield that you get after using Temperance. I would move that to something else. I'd have to go through all the skills. I'm sure if I looked at all the skills, I could figure out everything that I said. But no, White Mage, I think if they are going to do anything, that's the job to look at. Scholar, if you're going to do something, it is so that you actually have room to innovate on the job, but not because it's lagging behind or performing poorly. Because let me tell you, it's not. It is not lagging behind. Little bit too button bloaty, but not lagging behind. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Healer. Oh, we are missing a hello. Womp womp. Thought we were going to make it. Healer usually complain that they have too little to do during boss encounters, which I guess is because incoming damage to the party is usually static and predictable. Correct. Would it be more interesting to have boss encounters where incoming damage is more erratic and constantly pulsing, but the DPS check is a bit lower? I absolutely think you can do that. And in fact, I don't think that needs to be every fight. I think you can. I think we have seen fights that showcase the ability to do this. Great example is Barbaricha, which was largely lauded as the best Endwalker trial in the game, Extreme Trial, where there's a constant need to manage your instant cast abilities, incoming damage, the party splitting up. There's a lot of pressure on especially less experienced healers to really put a lot of effort forward in that fight while doing all of the mechanics, dodging the punches, dodging the baited AoEs, dodging all the ground AoEs, keeping up with where she's going, whether you need to get inside, whether you get to her sides, behind. Like, there's all sorts of like little aspects to that fight that keep healers, especially the average extreme level healer, on their toes. Unpredictable, on the other hand, is not a good idea. The unpredictability of damage should more come from who is receiving it and not a complete, like, why did somebody just lose half their health? Like, what would have even caused that? Like, let's say, here's a good example. Let's say there was a boss that had 2 tank autos, and every time they autoed the tanks, 2 random other players also took like an AoE auto around them. And I'm not talking about like DSR where it's baited. I mean like fully random, like who the other 2 players are. So one player could take 3 in a row. It's all 6 of the other players could take like separate hits separately. Like, it's just down to every individual pull. That then all of a sudden, while you can play, you have to kind of plan for every contingency differently, because if every different player takes one, you're very likely not doing anything. Whereas if one player takes 3 of them back to back, or 2 players are accidentally overlapped, they're not spread enough, all of a sudden it creates a much different dynamic where you usually need resources in tow. And then it's a matter of the frequency of how often things like that happen. But damage frequency is actually the biggest thing. It's not even about the random, unpredictable nature. It is, as you mentioned, constant damage. Because damage is just infrequent enough in Final Fantasy XIV to effectively allow the overlapping of usually minimum 2 to 3 damage reduction tools, oftentimes we don't face much pressure in regards to the use of those tools outside of the highest level of content. And the result of that is that you very rarely need to do more than a single off global cooldown, maybe 2, in healing. If you're extra responsible and you maybe have tools to spare, you'll preemptively throw a lot of stuff out and then barely have to do anything. Knowing where to throw your deploy low for Scholar can completely eliminate the need to ever stop pressing Broil, or if anyone to stop pressing anything offensive. And I think that's really the big thing. We have so many defensive tools and not enough outgoing damage to actually challenge the use of those tools in most content. And I think that's because when they design content around the prospect of these defensive tools, they design them around the idea that we should always have 2 or 3 of them available, and will rarely ever eat any of them raw. I think it's better to have a number of AoEs that you quite frankly just don't have the tools to deal with, but they're not designed necessarily to be lethal in isolation. They're designed there to put pressure on the players to make sure that before the next lethal one comes out, that they are not slouching, slacking. There's something in place, or the players have to do something in that time in order to counteract that. The only problem with it is that we've not trained players to think that way because the whole game isn't designed that way. And we'd be talking about strictly things that happen going forward, which creates the problem of players not really learning how to play the game by the time they get to max level, which is already a thing, but like it creates an even greater division between the two skill levels. However, I'm a firm believer that any player who wants to learn how to play better will learn how to play better. And the ones who don't, you cannot help. It doesn't matter if the game provides the tools. It doesn't matter if players create the tools. Players who don't want to improve simply won't. Or players that feel like they've improved to a point that they are adequately content with will not continue to. And then it's a matter of where that level actually lies. I'll give you a great example. I'll use myself. You do not see me grinding in PF. You do not see me reaching for super high logs. You'll even sooner see me do dumb shit that costs me my logs. Like, great example, in Fru, I almost always stop hitting the boss in phase 1 for like a good 15 to 20 seconds because my team is like aiming for a certain kill time instead of just trying to rush the boss down. And if they don't have the right amount of time in that first phase, then the cooldowns don't become available going into the second phase, and it creates this like weird discomfort where like the 2 minutes are a little late and everyone's already starting to spread out, or maybe a defensive cooldown doesn't come back in time, so it's like, well, why do that on purpose? So I'll literally stop DPSing for 20 seconds straight, despite how unoptimal that is and how bad it's gonna look. I quite frankly don't care. I'll often just there's a lot of things I could do to get the log up, but I'm very adequately pleased with the fact that I am doing my job to the point where we are at this point where if I don't stop, we're so far ahead. And if I do stop, we're on the pace we want to be on, so that the other players can feel more comfortable playing through those scenarios because they have all their tools available and they don't need to stop. I've always done this. And I am perfectly content with that, with not chasing a bigger high. But that's me, and my level of contention is a level that is capable of clearing everything in the game. Not everyone's going to be at that level of content, of that degree of being content with what they've achieved or what they've accomplished. They might just be simply okay with the fact that, you know, they just do dungeons and whatever not, and maybe they dip into 24-mans occasionally, or maybe they dip into an extreme trial once in a while, but they're not like Giga Chad pros at those things. They're still just playing at the skill level that they've kind of capped themselves at. So with that all said, I think it doesn't matter if players don't learn to play by 100, because the ones who want to learn how to play will learn how to play, and the ones who don't. So in other words, yeah, I would prefer that they do at least something to improve the pressure on healers. I saw this one had an @ Mondays of Mr. Happy. Hashtag gets the thing. It lights up in blue with the hashtag. With the @ that's not my YouTube name, so it doesn't tag me or anything. Meowdy, hi. People are mad about the group who beat Fru without healers. Here we go again. All of them have been beaten without healers. Fru's considered easier than top and DSR, and like everything's been beaten without healers. Like top was beaten without healers. That seemed crazy. So I don't care when people complain about this. Like, all right, you know what? You're right. Every group will probably start doing it without a healer. Yeah. I'm like waiting for all the healerless groups, all the people walking out. You're like, oh, you do it healerless? Oh, come on, easy, right? Like, here's the thing. I'm definitely in the group of, should it be possible? Probably not. I'm also in the group of 8 people did it. If everyone was doing it, that would be a real problem. And yes, you seem to agree with that sentiment. But most of the people who say those things are people who don't do ultimates. Like, it's the honest truth. People who do ultimates see that. They understand the amount of work that goes into it. They maybe get a laugh, maybe meme around about it a bit, and then they just kind of stop talking about it. People who don't do the content, they're the ones who yap. They're the yappers. I decided not to stop for it, but the question before this asked what music I use for my videos. I usually just buy like licenses to use music commercially. Some of it's off, like, I'm trying to remember the name of the website. It's like Purple Planet Music, or I don't know. I just kind of, sometimes I just search around. I think that's one of the sites I've gotten them off of. There's a handful of other sites, but yeah, I don't know. I just like listen to like, what's it called? Free use music, like things that are copyright free, but they usually have like a commercial license that you can buy, and it like whitelists it for your channel. And I'll usually just throw like $12, $15, whatever they're charging at a creator. I mean, I'm a creator. I know what it's like to make stuff and, you know, kind of want to be able to earn a living on it. And so I'm not going to disrespect them by downloading it and using it and just being like, oh, sure, hope they don't find it. I'll just go and buy the license whenever I need to, however long it lasts. And I think I had to rebuy the license for the music I used behind this. And that's this is the same song that I use. It's called Moonrise. Behind most of my videos. I think I had to recently rebuy that license because I bought it like 8 years ago or something, and like the license ran out or something. So yeah, I think it's Purple Planet Music was where I got that one. Hashtag Monday, Mr. Happy Mondays, and Ivy, who's not here. Again, I think she's in the other room. Hello, Happy. Hello, Kitty. Hello. Don't know if you both are open for those, but I had an idea for content in the future, maybe even Sly or Granny Gear. Do you ever think about looking back at old 14 trailers and comparing what you thought would happen versus what actually happened? No, not really. I feel like I feel like all of that's captured pretty well. Like I could honestly just go back and pull those old VODs and just string them together, and then. Like, that would cover what I thought was going to happen, and then we all know what happened because we played it. So, no, I think my retrospectives, where I actually covered the game state, is far better than going back and looking at this. The only one I really remember is everyone thought Lise was a dancer in the Stormblood trailer. Not everyone, but, like, I was like, guys, she's literally using monk skills. They're like, oh, you don't know. It could be dancer could be like a job that goes off of monk, even though they'd already said they would never do that again at that point. And I was like, has nobody ever seen like a Chinese martial arts film? Like, I get it. I get that she swung her clothes and whatnot, but her sleeves aren't a weapon. And she's using monk skills. That's Snap Punch. That's Fists of Wind. Like, she's using monk skills. That's like the only one where I look back and I go, and then I was like, sure enough, she's a monk. I was like, I told you she was a monk. Like, but she also has this, and I'm like, that's still punching. We don't do that. Like Summoner and Scholar, we knew they would never do another job like that with Scholar. Well, okay, they said they would never. At this point, it's been a while. You never know. I'll say that. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey there. Hi. I have a question about the res tax on Summoner/Red Mage. Started this game late. Shadowbringers and Summoner was your first job. Back then, I remember Summoner was actually one of the top, if not the top DPS played by people who played it well, and it still had a raise. Guess my question is that while I know it was a very popular choice, that didn't seem to be anyone complaining about it back then. It didn't seem to break the game, but I wasn't a raider at all, so I don't know if Summoner had high. I actually don't remember the state of Summoner in late Shadowbringers. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the recollection to how it was actually performing in high-end content. I'm sure if I dig through, like, old resources, I could find an answer to that. But it's really hard for me to give you a real answer. There have absolutely been points, I will say this, where Summoner has been one of the strongest jobs, and it has a raise. And then it usually gets dialed back right after that. And then it kind of sometimes just starts to slip into that like same role again. And then it goes down again because it gets noticed. But unfortunately, as it's not a job I play, my knowledge on the job's exact history and its timings, I would say are inadequate. I would say that another element that has changed for the job, however, that is not being brought up here, is that Summoner is easier to play than it's ever been. And while a lot of people don't agree with this, they have shown a propensity to make easy to play jobs or jobs with really low skill ceilings or difficulties for pulling off their burst windows. They have shown to more likely make them lower damage output jobs. And I do think that's playing a role in Summoner as well. Now, Red Mage, on the other hand, I'm not going to say it's a hard job. I think it's easy to pick up and play at like a moderate to okay level. But I think when you look at a Red Mage who's really trying their best, it can be quite the time. But Red Mage, I think, is also performing a little better in some ways than people give it credit for. On top of the raise just actually being valuable in content right now because, quite frankly, the amount of damage we need is not... It's not saying don't bring the rage jobs, saying bring the rage jobs. If anything, you can still get it. But also, the way that a lot of the short bursts end up working and the way Red Mage actually performs in something high-end like Fru or Chaotic or the Savage tier, it's not even just adequate. It's like above what we would expect. So I think Summoner you can kind of levy this argument with right now, but I think Red Mage is actually performing at a more than adequate level. And I will say this, Summoner is one of the most played Magic jobs across the game, strictly because of its ease of play. Like, people who aren't super comfortable with the role tend to lead towards Summoner because it's easier to play. And keep in mind, this is anecdotal. I don't have the data to back that statement up that says most people play Summoner. But I do more often see some. Anecdotally, I see more Summoners when I queue into, like, random stuff than I see Red Mages, Black Mages. Pictomancer are probably the most played. And I think that's because it is also relatively easy to play at a moderate to okay level. It doesn't have a raise, but people really like it. So I'd say after Pictomancer, Red Mage is kind of there. I'm sorry, Summoner is kind of there. But Red Mage, I think, is performing better than it's given credit for. I would actually have to pull up the data to see exactly how it's going right now. But I've done a lot of stuff where people have thought, oh man, a Red Mage. Like, I remember we went Picto, Red Mage, Dragoon, Bard for Fru. And Red Mage pumped, man. It was crazy. That fight worked really well for Red Mage. And then in most other fights, the damage check is not relevant enough for you to be like, oh, Red Mage? Ugh, it's not doing enough damage. What the fuck? You have like a whole minute spare time in Arcadian 4. Like, chaotic is like, you need those raises bad a lot of the time. So it's like, yeah, I don't know if people, no one should really be saying that about it there. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Greetings and salutations. Hello, I've been catching up on your FF Platinum adventures while grinding my way through Phantom Brave Lost Hero. I don't know what that is, but I hope it's fun. And that's some quick questions. One, since you already have Final Fantasy VIII done, how is the Platinum for that compared to the others? Very easy. Final Fantasy VIII Remastered's Platinum has a lot less nonsense than the old Final Fantasy VIII trophies used to be, or the old Final Fantasy VIII achievements in general, looking at like Steam. There's one for like beating the game with Squall at level 8, for example, which you basically have to leave him dead most of the game so that he doesn't gain experience from forced fights. And then I think you generally do the Cypher trick in that version where you can get Cypher. You can use Cypher to really... I forgot who Cypher's stats transfer to. Is it Selfie? I think Cypher's stats transfer over to Selfie. Is it his junk? I don't remember. Somebody in the comment section probably knows. But Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, super easy platinum. Definitely one that most people would not struggle with. To what's the most difficult platinum? Oh my god. At this point, I would have said Final Fantasy IX. I'm doing 10-2 right now. And 10-2 actually doesn't have as much in its platinum as I thought it would. But I just started last mission. It might not be the hardest platinum, but it is certainly the worst one to do. I think 9 is arguably the hardest platinum, but 10-2 is like the most intolerable one. Because it's like, all of these things are not that bad individually. Even getting the 100%, technically, if you're willing to go into New Game Plus. I got mine in New Game Plus because I missed like 0.2% because I missed something stupid early on. It's not that bad. But last mission is so bad. And most people don't even know what last mission is. I feel like I gotta make a video on it or something because I was like, oh, my real hell starts tomorrow. Post a picture of last mission. Like, oh, are you playing 12 next? It's like, most people don't even know what last mission is. And to be fair, you're better off that way. 3, is there any game you thought about platinuming but saw the requirements that hell nah? So, one game I don't think I'll be platinuming is the Cydia NT. There is a lot of online play required, and I don't think I'm going to have much success with that. That being said, I did say to my stream, hey stream, how many of you own Dissidia NT? Do you think we could rig it? And you know what? If I can rig it with my chat, I think I will platinum Dissidia NT. I think that's the only one. Was Dissidia NT. I said, I don't think that's going to happen. But even then, TBD. Wow, this video is actually really long. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Hi. Wondering, since we have to wait till next Alliance raid, do you have a guess of what we could expect to encounter in it based off your knowledge of 11? I don't think knowledge of 11 dictates what you should expect to see in the next one, only because the arrangement of bosses in the first one is really random. Like, Prish, Chains of Prometheus hero, who actually is a boss as part of a special encounter. I can't say she's not a boss. She is a boss as part of certain encounters in the game, but it's like something that's really optional. Then you have Fafnir, who's like a very, very notable endgame boss, but like going from Prish to Fafnir has no linearity to it. It's just like super random. Then to go to the Archangels, which is Xylark content, then to go back to the base game and fight. There's no rhyme or reason as to the order. It's really more like, what are popular bosses and what are they teasing? I think Camlanot and Ealdnark are shoo-ins for the next one. And then, but the other two, honestly, up in the air. I can tell you probably won't see Absolute Virtue again. Sincerely doubt it. Same with Pandemonium Warden. I doubt we'll see him either. He's another like Absolute Virtue-esque boss. And I think you'll probably see Promethea in the 3rd tier, but not in the 2nd tier. I think Camlanot, Ealdnark, and Promethea are the only safe bets. I think there is room to expect some Treasures of Otter-Gone bosses. Maybe one of the Chariots from Salvage. They could even do like one of they could do like, I don't think they're gonna do a Chimera, and I don't think they, you know what, they might do the other Otter-Gone kings. Like, so Galul Jaja is one of 3 Beastman kings in the Otter-Gone expansion. The other 2 were Medusa and Gerfurler, who we've also met as well. So so iterations of them are possible, I would say. The very, very notable bosses inside of Otter-Gone. No Alexander, no Odin. I doubt we'll see Lilith. Well, I don't know. The Walk of Echoes means Lilith is actually a possibility as well, but I'm hard-pressed to him. Wings of the Goddess is a little beyond that game's peak days, even if Lilith and Lilithset are actually considered very good characters, and I do agree with that. I also think Seeker's characters are really good. Hades, Arciella, the various, oh god, what are they called? The gods, they're part of that boss fight that got beat not too long ago, that just took like 11 months to clear. I can't remember their names right now, but I remember their actual names, like Kumhao and stuff, but can't remember what they're called, like the genre of monster they are. But yeah, I think my only 3 absolute shoo-ins are Camlanot, Ealdnark, and Promethea. I'd be hard-pressed to not see those pop. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Lally-ho. Lally-ho. So the 14 is dead season again. Yep. Some may notice it's louder and more toxic than before with the recent mixed reception of Dawntrail, so the rise of Ragebait grifting, and the expert analysis throwing out around their favorite toy, Steam DB. Any thoughts on this year's drama? Well, it's louder because more people play the game. Remember that. Remember that when complaining is louder, it's because more people play. It kind of works against the narrative a little bit. Yeah, Steam DB is not a very good comparison. I will say it cannot be. It's not a number that can be absolutely ignored. As long as there are enough entries into the reviews to actually judge it. But I'm sure if I read through those reviews, I'm willing to bet there's some of it's going to be reasonable dislikes, which, to be clear, just because somebody doesn't like something and is talking about not liking it doesn't make it grifting necessarily. But I'm willing to bet some of those comments are, let's just say they are to the right. Let's call them that, if you catch my drift. And are less civilized, I suppose, in nature. Not that the two have to be one or the other, but I'm willing to bet there's a little bit. All right, and that was the last question. There were a couple of other hashtags. Another one asked about the Healerless Fru, so I kind of skipped that one. That was actually just 2 questions ago. Another one was a suggestion about the mounting in cities, but it was not really. It was like, what do you think of my solution? And it was like, I don't know. It's just, I think my answer from last week, no matter how you try to explain or get around it, it still explains the reason as to why they probably don't want to do it. Regardless of solutions like automatically dismounting in really crowded areas, which, quite frankly, I think kind of defeats the entire fun of being able to mount in a city. So for me, that's kind of like a no-go. And then there's just some other comments, some about the answers from last week, some about specific things that I mentioned. Me not answering the turkey question, but then going on a rant about how turkey is not good. Listen, you got me there. I couldn't help myself. But that's it. That's going to be a wrap for this week's Q&A. So, Thank you for watching this week's weekly Q&A. A lot of 14, ironically, based on the start of the video. It was actually almost entirely Final Fantasy 14, I believe. So that person probably enjoyed the video this time around. If they watched past the beginning where I told them that they could fuck off if they didn't like whenever I answered non-14 questions. That's up to them, I suppose. But anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section of the video below. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring, and I will see all of you in the next one. Until then, take care.